Games, board games. I might be talking about board game mechanisms. But I'm not gonna shout. Today I'm talk. Oops, wrong banner. Today I'm talking about action points. This is something that I anoint as a decent mechanism, which I will probably use. You maybe used it without really giving it thought, but choose to do it in the best way possible. It's a supporting mechanism, which is wonderful. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, evening, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It's 10 a.m. UK time. Time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And yeah, today I am talking about action points. How complicated is too complicated? That's sort of what I'm talking about. So yeah, with action points, what happens is you don't just do one thing on your turn. You get to do multiple things. But sometimes you get to choose two out of a list of four, or maybe you get to choose two out of a list of many, or sometimes maybe you get to spend the points, and that's where the term comes from. Because maybe likened to Cal, which I think is the most pure version of this mechanism, it's like, okay, this costs you one, this costs you 3, this costs you 5, and you've got 10 action points to spend every turn, which means that you can do multiple things and you can mix them together, kind of like a menu. It says, oh, on my turn, I don't just get to do one thing, I get to do a bit of that and a bit of that. Maybe I get to do these two massive things. Maybe I get to do one massive thing and a bunch of small things, and I get to think about how to combine these things. And it gives you lots of potential for how you're going to mix it up, and it's fantastic. Hello, Yoda. It is lovely to see you. Thank you for joining in. I hope that you are generally well. What are you up to? And what have been some of your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So, yes, what have been some of your recent highlights? Please do let me know. I will now go off and show you what have been some of my recent highlights. Firstly, yesterday I went over and I met up with Pearl. As you saw, I was streaming from over there. We played my game, a game about selecting 7 cards speedily, searching for synergies, and I managed to get these 7 cards at the end. So I've got the artist who's got an egg on the picture. The baker gives me free cakes for having the egg. The cook gives me points for having the cakes and the egg. And then the musician who's providing some notes and also a hat. And yeah, trousers just gives me points for having a creature with 2 legs. And then the party planner who's got the 10 points if I've got the double music, double cake, double hats, and double creatures, all of which I had. And then, of course, the mirror I used to copy the party planner. So I got loads of points. I got like 30-something points. And then, but Pearl got a river, which is a nature card, forest, which is another nature card. The hiker gives you bonus points for every nature card. The chemistry, the elementary, the plants, the rain, which doubles the value of the plants, and all of these things which are worth 3 points. And then the collector gives you plus 3 points for each card of that number, which is fantastic. And so, yes, Pearl managed to get the highest score ever. I'd have to calculate it again, but I think it was 48. So you've got the cards give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 15, 16, 17 for the points on the corners. 17, the hiker gives you 1, 2, 3, 4. Another 8 makes 25. The rain gives you another 6, gives you 31. And the collector, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, that makes it 46. 46 points. No one before in like more than 10 games had managed to get over 30 something. So congratulations to Pearl, and that was a lovely thing. Yoda says, recent highlight, I built the Friends apartment Lego set. Party planner, that sounds familiar, yes. One or I didn't even think of it. Was that actually inspired by your game, Yoda? I don't know. Um, I hope you don't mind. I mean, it's it's like just happens to be the same title, but yeah. I guess we talked about it a lot, so I'm sure that maybe it filtered through subconsciously. But yeah, hope that cool. Yeah. I mean, you're never sure because some people are strange. I'll get to that in just a moment. Um, Also, we played my favorite game ever. For those who don't know, my favorite game ever is the pure abstract Go. You take turns to put down stones. If someone's stones are surrounded by someone else, so here the white on the top left is dead because it is surrounded by black. There's no way for it to make life, and it's just going to be dead. Um, and then after a couple of warm-up games, we started off on the 19 by 19, made first contacts in the bottom middle, like from my perspective, obviously. From Pearl's perspective, it would be like the middle right. But then we moved into the middle, and when we had a fierce battle, and towards the end, it looked more like this, where I dominated the right side of the board, Pearl dominated the left side of the board, and my little white group in the corner, that failed invasion. There was no way that I could get it. Maybe I could have if I'd played optimally or if Pearl had made a mistake. I don't know. But also, what I remember is like at the bottom going into the middle, and I managed to snake out and really eat into Pearl's territory. But normally there's more little battles going on, and yeah, for whatever reason, it felt fairly sedate. It felt like we didn't do a lot of fighting, except for in the middle, right on the border. So yeah, we started off picking our sides, and that was just such a lovely day. Yoda says, I never played Go. There was even a competitive league at the university, but I stayed with chess because I already knew the rules. But I wasn't very good. Let me tell you, if you have never played Go, please don't be scared of giving it a chance. Um, so Go, the reason that I love it is because built into the game, there's the opportunity to give one person extra stones, and starting off with a small board, a 9 by 9, or even start off with a 5 by 5 until he can win every time as black, and then go to a 7 by 7, and then go to 9 by 9, and then maybe a 13 by 13, and then once you're ready to then go to the 19 by 19. The point is you learn your strength, and then someone who's maybe a little bit better than you play, and they might give you like 3 or 4 or even 8 or 9 stones on the board. And it's not about who wins this game. It's about learning together. The whole nature of Go, where you give the other person extra stones to start off with it means that you can play a competitive game even with a slight disparity of skill, if that makes sense. And that is frankly a big part of the reason why it is my favorite game. Other recent highlights I do want to say. So if you were not planning to go to KCON this year in 2022, I think it's the a couple of weeks after Essen, but it's a fantastic convention. And as you might know, I was planning a leaving party for a long time. I've been thinking I really want this big leaving party. Hello, Timmy, just talking about recent highlights. Feel free to share. And I thank you for joining us. And so, yes, if you are in the UK or if you are able to get to the UK, maybe put this date in your diary, 19th to 22nd of October. And KCON is going to essentially be hosted by me. And I like, the fact that Kel has essentially given me the opportunity to have the leaving do that I really want. So please come over in 2023 and also come over this year as well, because it's a fantastic convention. But next year, it'll be all about me. Now, there were some people I heard who were concerned that this meant that KCON is stopping or it's retiring or something, but I won't say this is not the case. I am just being allowed to host. I'm being allowed to be a big part of it, to be like a feature guest or whatever you want to call it for 1 year and 1 year only, but then it will go back to everything. Now let's get to the main topic of action points. Action points are a brilliant thing. Brilliant things. So why are action points a brilliant thing? So fundamentally, action points, I think they allow you to build up that combo-rific thing. They give you options. It's not just do this on your turn or do this or that on your turn. No, it's, hey, you get to do multiple things. Do you want, if there's like 4 possibilities, that means that rather than just saying, okay, do one of these 4 things, which is 4 possibilities, now suddenly you could do one thing twice, or you could do one thing once and then another thing once, which adds to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 possibilities. That's amazing. Like just the way that the things explode. And then it's like, sometimes you can have one thing that costs more, that uses your entire turn in Netrunner, but it's all about that, the increased potential for variability and loads of options, but you still have only the 4 or 5 or however many actions to learn. So there is a bit of complexity, but it allows you flexibility and it allows you to do your own thing and feel like you've got the potential to do stuff. And hello, Adam. It is lovely to see you, who says, I'm not watching, but I like the method in Eclipse. As you get a bigger civilization, you get fewer action cubes. So you start off, you've got more to spend, you've got loads and stuff, you can do loads of stuff, but as you've got a bigger civilization, suddenly the action points that you've got, not only are they a figurative thing where you just have to remember them, but you actually get cubes that you spend and like, okay, now I've only got half as many as I started with. What's all that about? And so, with a wriggle and a jiggle and a quick stretch and a get up and a sit down, let's get into it. Action points are the main topic of the day. So firstly, I want to obviously give a shout out, as always, to Building Blocks of Tabletop Game Design, an encyclopedia of mechanisms by Jeffrey Engelstein and Isaac Shalev. Wonderful people, great designers, responsible for so many great games, and also Geoff Engelstein especially is wonderful at sharing that knowledge, founder of Ludology, although they're not on that show anymore. So how did they define it? In this book, it says, a player receives a number of action points on their turn. They may spend them on a variety of actions. And let's see what it says on Board Game Geek. It says exactly the same thing, except it also mentions the earliest example of a game listed on the Board Game Geek that uses action points is Special Train 1948. I looked up Special Train. I couldn't understand how it uses action points. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm sorry. And there wasn't really any instructions, but let me get into the slightly more modern games, mostly from this century. And let me just point out, there are 6,568 games with this mechanism. So it is fairly popular. It is fairly versatile. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let some examples. Let's have some examples. Let's throw in some examples here. So I thought we'd look at Netrunner. So look at that fantastic rule sheets. You've got clicks, which is your action points. The corporation, they get free clicks. So they can use a click to draw a card or gain a credit or install something or play an operation card or advance a card, which means that they might need to spend credits or trash a resource or purge virus counters. So if you spend 3 clicks, so that basically means all 3 of your entire turn, you remove all the virus counters to the bank. So this is really interesting because you've got a whole bunch of possibilities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A couple of them use another resource, but generally you're always going to do 3 things on your turn. You always do 3 things because all of them use 1 action point known as a click, except for the purge virus counters, which by using 3, it doesn't really feel like, oh, you've got to remember this is 2 and then you still got to do 1 more. No. This is just, you give up your turn, you do it. And cognitively, that feels like a really nice way to sort of simplify it, because we'll get into Takal, but that it's a lot more complex. Conversely, looking at the runner's turn summary, everything is just 1 click. Now this is interesting. When I thought of action points, I immediately thought that things had to be cost points, like there had to be some actual cost. And I wouldn't have thought that Pandemic would really apply. But apparently Pandemic, Forbidden Island, and also all the other pandemics and Forbidden Deserts, whatever, do apply. It's just, you've got some things and you get to do multiple of them. So Ticket to Rides, like if I was to be, well, technically you get 1 action point and you've got each of these 3 possibilities cost 1. No, I think the key thing is you have to have more than 1 action point. There has to be a possibility of doing more than 1 thing, and so then there has to be a possibility of combining them in different ways. That is the key thing of action points. So if you look at Pandemic, you can move. You can move in a different way where you play the card to be there, or you can play the card of where you are to go there, or you can shuttle flight. And there's also the special actions, which you might do less often. And yeah, building a research station, all of these things, you need to spend cards, discovering a cure, treating the disease, which isn't that special. Like you do it very often, treating the disease and sharing the knowledge, where you pass cards around. And so you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 active things. And so like with 8 active things, like if it was just 8, that would be like, okay, I get to do one of these 8 possibilities. But with 8 active things, that means you've got 8 times, is that right? 8 times 7? No, 4 times, it's 4 times 7. It's 28 plus 8 is 36. So there's 36 possibilities of combinations of action you could do on your turn. And also cognitively, they are kind of chunked up to, hey, this is about movement. And this is the stuff that's actually achieved stuff. And so it might be like, okay, I'm going to build a research station, but in order to do that, I've got to do that and that. Now, the interesting thing, of course, Pandemic being a cooperative game, it's not just about your actions on your turn, it's also about everyone else's actions. So this combinatorial flow works perfectly in a co-op game. But let's move on to something completely different, something competitive, something where you're wandering around, claiming treasure, trying to make buildings and stuff. And so you've got 10 action points. 10. I mean, that's a lot. And so you've got a couple of things that only cost you 1 action point, so you could, in theory, do them 10 times. But then they also have other resources. Like when you place one worker, it's not just your action point, it's also the worker that's being expended. When you move something, well, that doesn't intrinsically give you anything necessarily. Okay, uncover, like this is exciting, and then oh, I'm doing this, oh, maybe I even recover a treasure, I take it, and then amazing. And then you might exchange treasures, you might establish the camps, which is kind of how you win, or you might place a temple guards, which is also kind of how you win. And so the things that really push you towards winning, they cost you half of your turn. And it's really interesting here, like 10, and the numbers are 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 5. So you do have the ones because you need to be able to have those ones in order to use up the rest of your action points. Because let's say you want to do a few things that cost 3. Well, of course, you need to have something costing 1 at the end. You can't rely on people doing a 3, and a 4, if there were to be a 4, which there isn't. Or indeed a 3, a 2, and a 5. Or, you need those tiny things that are like, okay, this is how you can use your action points. But like then you want those big things, which is, okay, this is what I'm building up towards. This is what I'm doing. And I think that the numbers like 5, half of 10, like 1, 2, 3, and 5, like for me, this is really interesting. And this is really good design work. Don't bother with the 4. Don't bother with all the numbers. Just bother with the numbers that are easy to combine into the total of 10. And people do work in base 10, so it makes perfect sense. Now, yeah, just want to say that this is a wonderful game. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. Let's go to Foydom, where Foydom, you basically, instead of saying action points, it's you play this many cards from your hand. So each card is an action, and each card lets you do a thing. And this is a really interesting development, because in this situation, this kind of gets into hand building potentially. It gets potentially, depending on the exact rules of the game, it gets into hand management. And like, of course, this is quite a complex game. There's a lot of stuff going on, and the cards might do a lot of different things. But fundamentally, you can have a card that says, hey, you do this or this or this, which means that you can do any of those things only once per turn, unless you have 2 of those cards. If you have multiple of the cards, then suddenly you can do that thing multiple times. And this is fascinating. Finally, I thought, let's look at Starship Samurai, a bunch of cards, and each of the cards, you've got these tokens that allow you to have different strengths, but fundamentally you're still only performing one order, doing one action. So this is where I would personally, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying I necessarily disagree, but I would like to start the conversation. I would like to challenge Geoff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev, who asserted that this is a sort of action point system, because I feel like the key part of the action point system is that you are able to do multiple actions. And maybe I'm wrong. This is just from reading through a couple of reviews and reading through this file, but it feels like fundamentally it's all about spending your wealth tokens, this exhaustible resource, and you do your thing, and then you decide how much power do you want to do it? How much do you want to do it? So you only get to do one thing, but by how much? And that doesn't feel like it's the combinatorial aspect that I feel really sets aside action points as an interesting mechanism. So if we go back to the action points thing there, and now I'll make myself bigger. So we've had some examples. How does it impact a game? How does it affect the experience at the table? Well, it means that each turn feels bigger. In Pandemic, because the AI, the disease, has a turn after every player, it means that you feel like, okay, I'm able to do something rather than just, okay, I move one and then one and then. Like, you want to be able to do as much as is required before the disease spreads, right? And you can't really reduce the effect of the disease turn. You can't make that much smaller than it already is. So how can we solve that? How can we give players a fighting chance? Well, give them the potential to do more stuff. So yes, it's essentially a game for two sides, all the players versus the disease. And of course, it's an asymmetric game, and one of them is run essentially without any player intelligence, making it a cooperative game. But fundamentally, it's all about these two sides. And if one asymmetric side has to be at a certain power level, give the other side multiple action points, and maybe you can balance the power level a little bit that way. How else does it improve the game? Well, how else does it affect the experience? It might feel like, oh, I can do these two things, and if I do both of these two things, then, well, hey, so rather than having, okay, I do that thing on this turn, and I hope that the other person doesn't deny it from me for the next turn, it's a case of saying, okay, the two things that combo really nicely together, I am going to do them both because I have that power. It feels empowering. It feels like you have a bit more control. That's how I think it impacts the experience. I do think it is versatile. And I was thinking about this with regards to acting. Some mechanisms like acting, like communication limitation, these are going to fundamentally change the style of game you're making. Whereas action points, this could fit pretty much any game. I mean, frankly, it could fit a dexterity game. I could imagine a dexterity game with action points in it. It would, by its nature, it has to be a certain level of complexity because having to do like two things or even more out of menu is obviously more complex than just doing the one thing, but it could absolutely fit some sort of dexterity game. It could fit a real-time game. It could fit it has fit, like most of the games tend to be somewhat complex, slow, strategic games, but I think that's also partially because when people are doing charades or a quiz game, they expect the ultimate simplicity. So even though action points don't have to be super complex, even that slight bit of complexity, I mean, Forbidden Island adds too much complexity for what people would want for a game about quizzes that you can play when you're drinking. Do you know what I mean? So when is it good? Like, those people who want to have their freedom, those people who want to strategize, those people who want to think, oh, which combination of these things should I go for? Other than the slight complexity and the potential to, like, there is a potential to say, oh, I want to have these action points. Let's make them worth 1, 2, and 3, and let's give people 5 points, which there's the potential for it to get too mathsy. There is the potential for it to be an accessibility issue because you do need to do a little bit of arithmetic. But then going the other way to the point where everything just costs 1 and it's 1 point out of everything, okay, that's now simpler. And if you've got a bunch of cards and it's the case of, okay, on your turn, you get to play this many cards. Well, I think that tactile quality of putting down cards would actually make it a bit more approachable. So I think that it would be interesting to use that system developed in Feudum in a simpler game, because I find it fascinating how in the most complex games, sometimes you do get these mechanisms that aren't inherently complex, but they are only complex because of the context. And finally, have I used it in any of my games? I don't think it's in any of my published games or any of the LDEC games, but it is definitely in Seize the Power. So in Seize the Power, you start off, you've got one thing that you can do, and you can get a house, you can try to get educated, get a job. You could do your job if you've already got a job. And I think there might be one thing that I'm missing. But there's not loads of actions, right? But then, once you've gotten your house, then the house can potentially give you 2 actions or 3 actions. And we were discussing that potentially it should start off with more, or maybe there should be more houses that give 2 and potentially even like a couple that give 3, because I had one that gave 3 and then that was overpowered. But yeah, we could rebalance that, and having a resource that then gives you more action points to spend every turn is interesting. And this sort of inexhaustible resource, where it's a case of use it or lose it, you just do that thing, it reminds me of Magic the Gathering, the lands. I mean, you are getting this amount of mana every turn, but it's not like it's an income. You don't get to keep that. And so, in a sense, you could argue, I mean, I'm not going to make this argument in all seriousness, but like, it is interesting to ponder that in Magic the Gathering, if each card being played is an action, and some of the actions are like just the actions on the cards, that's also cost mana. And certainly, depending on how you are playing, depending on what cards you've got, I think it is at certain points an action points game. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear Geoff and Isaac what they think of that statement. But like, having said that, Magic can probably be every single game. And it feels like, yeah, if you've got lots of creatures on your table and some of them have triggered abilities, or that you can spend mana to use, and you've got like so many lands at a certain point, okay, do I want to use them? Do I want to play the cards in my hand? But yeah, being able to grow and change the number of action points, whether it's indirectly through lands or through a housing system that gives you more energy, that gets you to do things, or whether it's kind of through action cubes that was already mentioned by Adam, or whether it was in Eclipse, or whether it's through having a hand of cards. And I could absolutely imagine a system where you build up a hand of cards, and then maybe you also put down some face down cards, and then the face down cards that you build up are sort of how many cards you're then allowed to play. I mean, that would be interesting, I think. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways to approach this, and I think I would frankly love to see more games that really play into the points of, okay, everything costs an amount, and you do have to do a little bit of arithmetic, like Tikal, which the truth is, I know from my experience with a game about counting cats, shapes, and colors that keeps getting trickier, that I'm more okay with quick arithmetic than most people. And so this is a real accessibility issue. But there are ways to mitigate that with tokens. But yeah, I would love to see more of this. So for now, that is basically the end of the show. I hope that this has been somewhat useful, and I hope that it's been enjoyable to watch. As always, let me finish up. I mean, I never actually said it, but please always feel free to comment, ask questions from like follow, but like if you've got any feedback, if you've got any comments or questions about the topic of today, about action points, then let me know. And my question to you is, with the question of the day, here's a little question before we go on our way. What is your favorite game that uses action points? So if we look at some of the highest ranked games, honestly, I am not going to disagree that this is a fantastic game. I absolutely adored it. Android Netrunner is calling out to me. Yeah, I'm going to actually Dead of Winter. That's a great game. But yeah, you know what? Even though I've only played it a couple of times, I'm going to go with Dead of Winter because there's such an amazing story going on, and it really feels like, okay, I'm controlling these teams. I love Dead of Winter. But yes, was also keen on the pandemic with the story. What is your favorite action game that uses action points? Let me know. Over to you. What are you up to? You can share something if you want to. So if there's anything you want to share about what you're up to or what you're doing or what you're about to be doing, let me know. I am personally going to trying to send a lot of stuff through the post, look through lots of boxes, unpack stuff, potentially get rid of stuff, try and find a big charger that I need to give to a friend, and that is pretty much my day. Also, I'll try and get outside, obviously. Continuing my potato diet today, I'm going to, as well as potatoes, I'm going to eat some soy sauce with that to make them a wee bit more palatable. Recap and wrap up before we finish up. So to recap and wrap up, action points are fantastic. I think that, look, they're unlikely to be used in a, I mean, I want to say in a proper mass market game. Like, don't get me wrong, like, Forbidden Island has sold way more copies than Yogi ever would. But when I say mass market game, I'm not even talking about the complexity. What I really mean is a party game. What I really mean is something that takes a minute or less to teach, and you can potentially bring out when you're at a pub or whatever. Like when you're at a pub and you're getting a few sheets to the wind, let's say. Now, yeah, in that sort of, in a party game, it's unsuitable for sure. But in any game that has any sort of real strategy, or it's any game that's really about strategizing, I think this is a great system for, rather than saying, hey, you can do one of three things, saying, hey, you can do two or three things. It instantly means that you are able to do combos and you're able to do more thinking about the combinations of stuff. But even there is a reason why Ticket to Ride it just lets you do the one thing. Because again, it is that smidgen simpler, it's a wee bit more accessible, and it's a wee bit easier to wrap your brain around. But it's definitely a great thing. And also we touched upon the notion of using cards to put down stuff. We touched upon, yeah, maybe that could be combined with building up the number of points you get and thinking carefully about how much stuff is worth. Like in Netrunner, where the one action that costs more than one click uses your entire turn, which is far simpler than saying, okay, this is 2 clicks, and you still get to do one of the other things. I mean, that might be overpowered anyway, but the point is it's simple. It's you do 3 things or you do 1 thing. It's kind of a binary there, as opposed to Tikal, where it's okay, you do 10 of that, or you do 10 things, or you could do 5 things, or you could do 4 things, or you could do 2 things, and yeah, that's a lot to think about. And if you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez in all the places: Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. If you want to check out my future streams, tomorrow I am chatting to Ben Downton. And if you have suggestions for future streams, feel free to share. If you want to join my Discord, go to stuffbybez.com/Discord, which will redirect you. And oh my gosh, I really should have mentioned my my Kickstarter. So please do go and check out my Kickstarter, and will be there, and you can also hopefully see it there, where there's 52 people following, which is great. I mean, it would be even better if there were more, but yeah, I don't know how many I should. Like, the original was a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after mixed noises, was almost 300 before it launched, and I think it might be that people are tired of this, or I've not done as good a job of sharing it, but I am going to, try. I'm thinking about getting rid of some of the creatures just to make way for new creatures. And so I'm thinking I might say, okay, let's sort out the creatures into 20 groups, and out of every group we will decide 2 of them to keep, and then go through a second time and then get rid of some, and we'll get rid of even a quarter of them, and then I'll add more that are hopefully even cuter. It's like, which ones are the cutest? That's my question to everyone, because I want these to be as like cute and fun as possible, bearing in mind they are meant to be cute and comical. So as always, please, if this was helpful, share, spread the word. More importantly, feedback's always appreciated. Thank you everyone for being part of this stream, for the comments, for everything, for being an audience. And for now, the only thing left to say is, as always, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone. Bye, bye.